And we are back on the Zero Hour. I am Richard RJ Eskow, and our next guest always helps me decode the strange and disturbing world of right-wing media. Eric Boehlert is a senior fellow at Media Matters for America. He's a former senior writer for Salon. His books include Lapdogs, How the Press Rolled Over for Bush, and Bloggers on the Bus, How the Internet Changed Politics and the Press. Eric, as always, thanks for joining us.
Hey, my pleasure.
Listen, you guys have been covering a lot of as always, disturbing stuff. Is it my imagination, or is Fox News sort of progressively getting more and more loony? I was thinking of a more professional sounding.
But I like it when people are accurate when they talk about Fox. In what sense?
Well, okay, especially when it comes to ignoring hate speech on the right and or whitewashing it and or trying to marginalize social action groups like Black Lives Matter as hate groups. In other words, trying to kind of invert our definition of what hate is. I'm thinking about, for example, you guys looked at it. One of your writers looked at the fact that they had completely failed to cover the fact that men had assaulted a Hispanic homeless person just because he was Hispanic, had urinated on him and beaten him up. It was a big national story, and had said Donald Trump was right. All these illegals need to be deported. No coverage of that on their program. But then almost as if in line with Trump, who started saying the other day that he thinks the Black Lives Matter movement is, quote unquote, looking for trouble. And all of a sudden we see that, I think this preceded it, but Fox News for a while has been suggesting that Black Lives Matter, which is basically just saying, please don't kill us anymore, that Black Lives Matter is a hate group. And now one of their graphics actually called it, as also reported on Media Matters, described it as a murder movement. What in God's name is going on over there? Right.
Well, to answer your original question, no, they haven't gotten crazier, because I know if you go back to, obviously this all, Obama is the unspoken in all of this, right? So the day Obama was elected and the day he was inaugurated, Fox News began to tell a story of what it wanted America to become, which was this sort of crime-infested country where the cities were these sort of hotbeds of radical, violent groups, and I'm thinking specifically about this year-long charade Fox did with the Black Panthers, right? They stole the votes in 2008. They intimidated all these people at the voting booth. People don't even probably remember it because Fox goes through so many machinations and charades. But this was a cornerstone, 2009, simultaneous with the rise of the Tea Party, which in my view was an absolute response to having, the first black president. And one of these parallel storylines was Black Panthers are going to return to prominence in America. Huey Newton is back. We're going to have this radical black president bringing all these people into. So that's sort of the umbrella, right? So they've been wanting to tell this story about black violence, black radicalism, ever since Obama was elected. So it's sort of come in waves. And certainly with the emergence of Black Lives Matter, they have spotted that and completely put it through the Fox spin machine. And as you said, what comes out the other side is Black Lives Matter is a hate group. And the irony, as you mentioned, is Fox News regularly has people on from right-wing hate groups.
Right.
If you go to Southern Poverty Law Center, I mean, these groups are listed as either far-right nationalists, white supremacists, and these people pop up with astonishing regularity on Fox News. And so, there's kind of this wild hypocrisy. they make up this narrative that the Black Lives Matter anti-police brutality, anti-police corruption crusade is the same, is wrong and awful and bad and killing people, which it's not. And then they embrace right-wing extremists.
Well,
so
including
it's very confusing.
Including their lionization of Cliven Bundy, who was declaring himself to be an armed revolt against the government of the United States and had gun-carrying followers. Somehow Cliven Bundy was a hero, whereas a nonviolent group saying, "Don't shoot our children anymore," becomes a murder movement. I do see what you're saying, Eric Boehlert of Media Matters, that there is there is a connection, of course, with Obama. Now, we had that tragic shooting of the sheriff's deputy, I believe it was, where the Fox then said, "Well, Obama put a target on everybody in a uniform in this country." I think I'm not sure about this, but I actually believe, of course, every death of a law enforcement officer is a tragedy. But I believe actually that police deaths are declining in this country and have declined under Obama. I would have to double check that unless you know, but that's my understanding. But so they're inflating this, creating this sense of fear.
Yes.
What's in it for them now? I mean, I always think, well, obviously there's ratings. Obama is going to be leaving office next year. Is this just ratings? Is it hate drives ratings? Is it fear drives ratings? What's their motivation?
Yeah, all of this stems from the id of Roger Ailes, who, by all accounts, is a raging Islamophobe. And a raging, I don't want, has problems with minorities. So what drives this is, and again, under Obama, we didn't see this under the Bush administration necessarily, but the script sort of flipped at Fox, which is sort of this never-ending sense of outrage and hate. So every 15 minutes, Fox has to figure out a way to get its average age 72-year-old white male viewer very, very agitated. And so there are a couple, 5 or 6 flashpoints that have been absolutely consistent year after year. And again, with the rise of Black Lives Matter, that just plays into one of their pre-existing narratives, which is, the rise of black radicalism under Obama. So it's driven. I think it's genuine. They actually do despise these people. They despise this movement. They despise anyone, I think, who's trying to hold the police accountable or trying to have a national discussion about law enforcement in this country. And I think it is clearly driven by ratings as well. And so in a weird way, I think it's legit, and I also think it's part of this, phony outrage that's built into virtually everything that airs on Fox News.
I used to think, Eric Boehlert, a few years ago that, I remember the stories about Republican talking points being distributed at Fox News and so on. I used to think of them as kind of the Pravda of the Republican Party. Yeah. But you and I have talked about the fact that they and the Republicans, they've got a different agenda now that sometimes overlaps, sometimes doesn't. Are they just a kind of rogue operation on the landscape now? Or are they just in search of ratings and as you said, and feeding off their own biases and fears? Or how would you characterize Fox News nowadays?
Well, it's a good point, because I think under Bush, again, it played a different role. It clearly was. You could almost see, back then, the fax machine churning from Karl Rove's office straight to Roger Ailes' office, straight to the newsroom. I mean, there was a clear chain of command every morning. There was literally an 8:30 morning, and the interim was this guy named, I think it was John Moody, So it went from Rove to Ailes to Moody to the newsroom. And this has been documented. These memos went out. This is what we're going to talk about today. This is how we're going to spin. So in that sense, it was, clearly part of the RNC apparatus. This is how we make Republicans look good. This is what the Bush White House wants to talk about. This is how we're going to attack the Democratic opponents. Once McCain got, steamrolled by Obama, and he sort of limped off the stage, and the RNC kind of limped off the stage, Fox and Ailes said, we're taking over from now. And in the short term, I think the Republican Party was thrilled. They had just been completely demolished. Bush was, left office at 22%. The party was in shambles. And here comes Fox News and says, we're going to do the communication. Here comes the Tea Party movement. We're going to sponsor this quote unquote grassroots. So the Republican Party was thrilled. They were dead and buried, and Fox helped them get up off the mat. Now, as you say, fast forward a little bit, it gets much more complicated when you have this presidential campaign unfolding. You've got the rise of Donald Trump, clearly a creation of Roger Ailes. They launched him to Republican stardom in 2011 with that birther charade. And now, he's running away with the Republican race as of now, and the Republican establishment is freaking out. Every day there was a piece today in the Boston Globe. All the old Romney team is trying to work together behind the scenes to stop Trump, because there were quotes from Romney aides saying this is a disaster for the Republican Party and things like that. So, in 2012, people thought Fox News kind of screwed up the Republican primary. It was messy, and Romney emerged as sort of this wounded figure, and everyone said, boy, we're going to do it better this time. And if you look at this primary, everyone is probably looking back at the 2012 primary and think, oh, the glory days when we had that smooth primary and we came out with someone like Mitt Romney.
Well, Eric,
total fiasco.
So, Eric Boehlert, speaking as one who is not necessarily troubled by the potential problems of the Republican Party, let me preface it that way, not deeply concerned about the trouble that they may find themselves in. So what's the deal with Trump and Fox? We heard that there was a little bit of bad feeling. You had Trump's profoundly disgusting comments about Megyn Kelly, and some ruffled feathers. But all of a sudden, it's kind of like it felt to me as if it was a showdown, and Fox caved.
Yeah, that's certainly, at the time, it certainly looked like Fox blinked and Roger Ailes blinked. But it's so bizarre. It's like Roger Ailes blinked, but he created this monster he was staring against. Look, right after that first debate...
Well, there's already been a novel about that, Frankenstein, so we know...
Exactly. But it was bizarre. If you look back, right after the debate, Trump immediately goes after Megyn Kelly. This is before the disgusting comments. And it was radio silence from Roger Ailes. There was no defense of Megyn Kelly. Nobody on the Fox News staff defended her. It was only when Trump made those bizarre comments about blood coming out of her eyes and things.
Jesus.
It was only then the word sort of went out, and a few of the personalities got on Twitter and said, leave her alone. So even in the beginning, when Trump picked a fight with the first or second most highest rated person at Fox, Roger Ailes didn't come to anyone's aid. But yes, he did. There was the showdown, and Fox blinked because they have to have him back on. He was going on CNN 2 or 3 or 4 times that weekend, and Roger Ailes' life passed before his eyes. He said, "Are you kidding me? I'm not going to." The 2016 campaign is not going to consist of Donald Trump going on CNN and trashing Fox News. That was not going to happen. So he sort of bowed down and kissed the ring, and he saw the writing on the wall. But yeah, and again, this it's all very complicated, and none of this is turning out how the Republican quote establishment, which I don't even think exists anymore,
right?
They're completely powerless to do anything.
Right.
But
feels
again,
it feels balkanized, the Republican establishment. It's just split in a million pieces. Listen, Eric, last question for you, and it's slightly outside, and we're talking to Eric Boehlert of Media Matters. It's slightly outside, but I can't. You used early on the phrase "the id of Roger Ailes," which, by the way, made me think of a new Twitter parody account I want to open. But is it, just kind of generally speaking, watching this Trump phenomenon, is he the id of the Republican Party? Is that what it comes down to? Is he kind of the hidden side, this xenophobic?
Yeah, not so hidden. Yeah, and I actually did a column at the beginning of all this, saying he was the id of Roger Ailes, even more specific.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, sure. And so that has been the revelation here, right? So all the pundits said, when this all started, let's not even cover him. He's such a joke. Oh, his favorables are so high. Blah blah blah. The pundit class is completely divorced from what's going on in the Republican base and how radical the conservative movement has become. They have papered it over for 6 years. They still pretend, Mitch McConnell and John Boehner are these, centrist Republican. They want to get along with Obama. Why can't Obama figure it out? They have completely blocked out how radical the Republican Party has come, which is why they never saw the Trump surge coming. They didn't understand, I don't think, this sort of naked hatred that now passes for, the conservative movement dialogue as expressed on Fox News. And so, yes, it is the id. Trump has pulled back the curtain on the misogyny, on the anti-immigration. As Bernie Sanders said on CNN this week, he's using racism to attract votes. So all of this is a revelation.
And open racism.
I still don't think the press has come to terms or will acknowledge it.
Right, open racism as opposed to hidden racism. I picture the right wing movement as 5 kids with a piece of chalk and a pentagram, not knowing what to do now that the demon has shown up. But unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. Eric Boehlert, Media Matters, as always, great to talk to you, and thanks for coming on the show.
All right, I'll talk to you soon.